All right, good night, Hempstead. Today is Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. Welcome you to the Hempstead School Board regular meeting at approximately 7:32. Appreciate everybody's patience as we were in a non-meeting. So I'll ask Miss Melissa, would you mind doing the roll call?
Sure. Carl Hubner.
Here.
Jason Giard.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Megan Malcolm.
Here.
Erin Pellegrini.
Here.
And Pinkerton Student Liaison, Shannon Caffell.
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools, Bob Thompson, and CFO, Jeff Dowd.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
Speakers are kind of loud tonight. All right, if we can stand for the pledge. Maybe Erin, you want to lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Board members, in your packets, there are one set of meeting minutes from the October 25th regular meeting. You can take a moment to take a look at those and be looking for a motion to accept with discussion as needed.
I'll make the motion to approve the meeting minutes from the regular meeting on October 25th.
Motion by Megan, is there a second?
I'll second that.
By Erin. Any discussion? All right, all approved? Unanimous?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Melissa, we do have one public comments, correct?
That's correct.
All right, Mr. Elliott? You want to state your name, address, and then get going.
Mark Elliott, 15 Hastings Drive in Hempstead. I want to talk about Hsd again. It's on the list of items. It's on the list of policies to be reviewed for a second time today. It's our data governance plan to protect our systems and our students. Since the policy was adopted in 2019, the district has not implemented a bulk of the items required in that policy. To go through revisions is a mistake given how they're written. The board should send this back and have it rewritten to include a minimum of annual compliance audits to ensure that the district is following through on its commitments to the students and the families. Additionally, add a mandatory reporting requirement so that when non-conformances arise, the board is aware. It's extremely frustrating to look at our data governance policy and see how out of date we are and how poorly it's being implemented and the risk it's causing our students and our data systems. The district failed to add key components, which puts us in violation of NHRSA 18966 and the Children's Internet Protection Act, which puts our E-rate funding at risk, and more importantly, puts our students at risk for accessing inappropriate content, losing their personal confidential information. The policy requires that the district create an inventory of all software and platforms, including the users, the provider, the purpose, the publisher, the privacy statement, and the terms of use. Half of our, actually more than half of our policy or our online systems aren't tracked properly. It requires review that all the applications meet the minimum standards of the state of New Hampshire. It requires that the service providers meet or exceed the standards for data protection and privacy. That's not happening. A lot of our web tools aren't properly tracked. We don't know what we're doing with those systems. More importantly, it sets the standards for an acceptable use agreement for all users. And that was adopted by this board through JICL and GBEF. And the district is out of compliance with that policy using procedure EGAR, which misrepresents facts to parents that we're liable for students' use of the internet and that we're responsible for providing all the policies and setting the standards for our students, when in fact it's the district's responsibility to teach students that. And it's just a shame that we're doing this and we're not in compliance, and it's not being reported to the board. I've reported numerous issues, including password issues that aren't compliant, that are putting our students at risk. We're supposed to change our passwords annually. My student has used the same password 2 years in a row, and it didn't meet the standards set out in our data governance plan. These are major concerns. We can't have our students put at risk through this.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. And Melissa, there's no other public comments, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. All right. We're going to move on to our school highlights with Principal Milbury, and then move on to Pinkerton Liaison Shannon Caffell. So, Ms. Milbury.
Thank you. We have quite a few highlights to talk about in the middle school. It's been an exciting couple of weeks. First, just want to talk a little bit about our Red Ribbon Week. We had a fantastic week. That was the Spirit Week, put on really by our students and the ABC Club with advisor Mrs. Bunnell, our Sunshine Squad with advisor Mrs. Karpinski, and also our 8th grade leadership RTI with advisor Mrs. Wolf. Had activities for the kids every day. Hopefully you had a chance to see the video of the Red Ribbon that they did out on the field, and that really was orchestrated by that 8th grade leadership group, and Elliot Ingraham really organizing it, and a group of kids who worked with Albie and got that ribbon set out on the field, and we all were there in our red, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. But overall, just a fantastic week full of activities and lots of school spirit. Also, we had the opportunity, our 5th graders had the opportunity with Mrs. Connors in the library to, through their global read aloud, they're reading the book Thirst. They had a conference call, a Zoom call, actually I think it was a Google Meet, with a school in Canada who had also read the book, and had a great back and forth dialogue where they all had, each school had questions prepared ahead of time. They asked each other things, how they felt about different parts of the book, and also got to talk a little bit about the community that they live in, and what it's like to live in Hampstead, New Hampshire, as well as Canada, where I think they said they had already received 8 inches that day of snow. So that was really awesome, and the kids really enjoyed that. Congratulations, our fall sports teams have all wrapped up. All of our teams made playoffs, so really great job. Cross country had some students in the state meet that did a great job. Our boys soccer team made it to the first round. Girls soccer made it to the championship, and our field hockey team won the championship, so we're really proud of all of those teams. And winter sports are underway. Tryouts have started this week. I hosted my first principals, actually Mrs. Joseph and I hosted together our first principals coffee. We had a parent come, which was nice. Hopefully next time we'll have a few more parents, but it was a great dialogue and some great questions and with that parent, and we're excited to do that. We'll plan to do that quarterly. Also just talked a little bit about some of the committee work. Our staff are all on committees working hard, and some of the great work that's been done so far. Our UDL committee is really working to provide some training to staff and to focus on some different aspects of UDL this year that are in line with our plan. Also, the advisory committee's been working hard to help get all of the advisors working on the same topics and doing some of the same activities. I don't know if any of your kids have talked about it, but hopefully they have. We've had a few school-wide activities on a Wednesday advisory that's been put on by kids. And so we're looking just to be more in line with our advisory program so that everyone's working on the same topics and doing some of the same things at the same time. Also, our discipline committee is working on ways to offer supports for staff relevant to discipline and behavior, and just giving some nice ideas of how we're handling discipline so that we're being consistent. And a lot of it is, teachers being able to handle things in the classroom that are appropriate in the classroom. And going from there, our BCBA just did a great training at our staff meeting on just some good strategies and supports for teachers in the classroom. And also our safety committee has been meeting regularly to review our procedures and practices for school safety. So all of those staff members that are working on committees are really working hard and committed to following through on the action steps we put in place in our strategic plan for the year. Also, 8th grade transition and Washington, D.C. Hopefully 8th grade parents received the first of many Pinkerton transition things with the data sheets that went home yesterday. And those are due back next week, and there will be a lot more dates coming up, really getting into some of the transition meetings in January, but I'll be putting those dates out soon. And also, we hosted a parent information night for the Washington, D.C. trip tonight. That was well attended, and parents had some great questions, so we're moving ahead with that. The deadline to register for that trip is Friday the 18th, so we're looking forward to seeing how many students are going to go on that trip. And that is all I had.
Any questions?
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Shannon?
Wow, that's so exciting.
Here you go.
It's so exciting to hear about the Sunshine Squad. I was one of the original members of that club with Miss Karpinski, so I love hearing about that.
Nice.
There's not as much as that. That was a lot. Whew. The jazz ensemble and the Dance 2 company class have a work-in-progress concert that will take place tomorrow in the Stockbridge Theater at 7 p.m. Picture Retake Day is November 17th. Friday, November 18th is the Pinkerton's Got Talent show. Students went through a thorough audition process with their diverse talents and have been working to present in the Stockbridge Theater at 6:30. There's one.
No, I don't think it was on. I think you're, yeah,
No.
so.
Is it working?
No, it is. No, it is. All right. Oh, thank you, Shannon. Any questions for Shannon about Pinkerton? All right. Any sports as far as any of the teams?
The boys and girls cross country clubs won their championships and brought the state titles back to Pinkerton. And the varsity cheer team also won their competition this past weekend, and they now hold 32 state titles.
That's all. Impressive.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nope.
Thank you.
All right. All right. We're going to move on to current business, where we're going to talk about the HCS addition plan. Ms. Thompson's going to present, and we'll have some discussion around this. I'd say I'll kick it off, I guess, just to say
Absolutely.
there's a lot of good
Mrs.
information.
Tomaselli. Can you put the,
There'll be a lot of good information coming right now, and that we're going to detail about the plan with a lot more detail than what's been there before. So I'm excited to, everybody to see that, including especially the community. But this will really kick off a lot of events from now through the voting in March, as far as what we'll be bringing to the voters. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Thompson at first, and there'll be a lot of discussion to follow.
Great. What we are about to put up on the overhead screen are our detailed floor plans. These have been the long-awaited floor plans. These are what will drive the final pricing, which we'll receive over the next couple of weeks. I think it's really important to point out there really are three priorities here. When we contrast this year's project with last year's project, there are large differences. This is a project that is smaller in scale. We heard a lot of feedback from the community after last year's votes. And the feedback that we received was, first of all, the overall price tag for the project was more than the voters could bear. We also heard that a lot of voters had a difficult time trying to delineate between what were the needs of the project and what were the wants. We took that feedback, and here we have a new project for consideration for the board and for the voters as well. So looking at the screen, if you see these detailed plans, what you're seeing is a side view of the school on the left-hand side, which is essentially a brand new main office bump out. And above that main office is a brand new 2,100 square foot library media space. If you look at the graphic on the right, you're going to see that is the 60s wing. And off of the 60s wing, we have 4 brand new classrooms that will help to accommodate for our increasing enrollment that our projections have indicated we will see over the next few years. And before we move into the actual floor plan, I think it's really important, again, I know folks have heard me say this, I'm going to say it again. The priority, there are 3 priorities for this project. Number 1 is student and staff safety and security. The current setup at the central school, the main office location and design are compromising student and staff safety. We need to have a better design to be able to protect the students and staff at the school. This is not my assessment. This is the assessment of the Department of Homeland Security. This is also the assessment of a recent facility study that we'll receive final reporting on shortly. If we could advance to the next slide, or to the next page. And actually, let me have you move ahead one. So when we look at this floor plan, this is the first floor or the ground level of the school. In the left-hand corner, you're going to see the main office suite. Thank you, Nicole. And if you look at the main office suite, you'll see that there really are multiple barriers, or what we would call controlled access, for any visitor who's going to be coming to the central school. And essentially their first point of contact would be somebody in the main office area. If you look at that office suite, it has office space for the principal, the assistant principal, the 3 individuals that work in the office, as well as a conference room and a nurse's office. If we were to look at so Nicole, if you go to that same slide, go up to the right, top right there. If we're looking at the ground level, we are also looking at, those are 2 additional classrooms that come off the back of the building. Again, this will help for us to accommodate our increases in class sizes. What both areas do, we free up the main office, the existing main office. That allows us to look at increased special education program or adequate special education programming space at the central school. And if we go to the next page, I'd like to take a look at the second floor. The second floor above the main office, you're going to see a library media space. So again, the second priority is having library media center space at the central school. And it's been said here before, the space that we have right now is not a library media center. It is a 900 square foot classroom that we call the library. And it is used to house books. The space is very restrictive in terms of being able to have classes in there. If you are to tour the space, and again, it's our intention to do several open houses, you'll see there's no technology in that space. And it's not because we don't have technology resources in the district, it's because we don't have space for them in the current library space. A 21 square foot space allows for collaboration. It would allow for a maker space. It would allow for technology, 3D printers, state-of-the-art technology that most libraries in public school libraries in the state of New Hampshire have, and the children in Hampstead deserve. So again, our second priority, we talk about student learning. What we're really focusing in on is this library media center space. And again, the second floor design, you can see there are 2 additional classrooms on the second floor. What you also can see here is the current stairwell that is in the 60s wing is not up to fire code. It is grandfathered in. When it was built, it was to code. It is not today. It is a narrow staircase. It is our assessment that this is not safe, especially if there were to be an emergency situation at the school. With the addition of the 4 new classrooms off the back of the 60s wing, we can remove that staircase and put a new staircase in at the end of that wing. So again, this project is very different from last year. We're coming to the voters with something that we believe is far more fiscally responsible and identify those 3 key needs that we have at the school. First and foremost at the top of the list is safety and security. Second is providing additional space for special education students. And the third is student learning, specifically by the inclusion of a library media center above the main office in that new addition. So these plans, we just received these plans yesterday, these updated plans. This has been a long path in terms of there's been several drafts. There's been lots of conversations with the Hampstead Central School Building Committee. But these are the plans at this time that we're moving forward with for pricing. We will update and put this on the school's website tomorrow so folks can access that. There are other documents there as well that can help to inform you about the building project. And at this time, I'll entertain any questions or hand it back to Mr. Smith in case I missed something.
First, I'd say any questions, board members, to Mr. Thompson about the plans?
And if you want to just advance the slide too, we can get a better detail of the space that we're talking about. You can continue one more slide. So there's a better detail of the first floor main office suite. And then if we advance one more, we can see the second floor library media center space.
Yeah, I'd probably add a couple more things, Mr. Thompson, on
Absolutely.
this. It's been a little bit time getting these plans, as we've mentioned before. I know I've grown impatient at times to receive these plans and see the floor plans to this detail, so it's really appreciative that we have these now. I also want to just, send some appreciation to the building committee, who in the last time we met a few weeks ago, the plans have changed since we met 2 weeks ago based on recommendations from that building committee. As an example, if we can go to the one right above, Ms. Tomaselli, the page right above before this. Yep, while she's moving the page to the previous. For those that saw the nurse's office before, the nurse's office with the whole office here, I'd say it was good last time, but based on building committee and based on Mr. Thompson and Mr. Dowd's recommendation and Mr. Mackey's, we did some changes to what the office will look like. We've actually, I think, increased the square foot without actually increasing the square foot by maximizing space of how the rooms will be moved around. So it helped increase the nurse's suite, but it also just made it a bit more I'd say symmetrical or, good lines of the room. So definitely appreciate the building committee. The other one is that we're gaining some storage area that we're losing by no longer having the trailers. So that building committee is actually shaping up pretty well, and looking forward to in the coming weeks with the building committee. We're going to be talking about communication plans. We're also going to be reviewing pricing, again, led by Mr. Thompson in these discussions, but plan on coming to the board with recommendations as well as, I'd say, testimonials from the wide array of members of that building committee, who range from senior citizens to grandparents to parents to former board members. There's a lot of different people on this building committee with a lot of different inputs that I think truly do represent the wants and needs of the community, not just parents, not just administration, not just teachers, but of the full community. So a lot going on there. And again, back to the core message that we're trying to make sure to re-communicate is safety, special ed, and student education. Those are the three areas that we're focusing this time. And message heard from last year, we cut out some things that are more wants than needs, to focus on those three areas. And I do believe we're focusing on those to deliver to the voters.
And I do think it's important to know, a good question to ask is, well, what's not in here, right? We took out the obvious. We are not building a new music room. The space has some issues, but we actually believe that portable wall that separates the stage between the music room and the cafeteria, we can build a permanent wall. We can put soundproofing in there. Is it ideal? No, it is not. But it's not a need in terms of the highest priority. Same with a dedicated elementary school cafeteria. It certainly would be nice to have that, but it's not a need. And there are many elementary schools that, their multi-use room serves, physical education. It's their theater. It's their cafeteria. So would we like to have that? Absolutely. But we have to focus on the need, and we can make do with those other pieces. Similar, we had conversations about adding additional bathrooms. Do we need them? We do, but we also can look to, budget something in a future year because it's a smaller expense. We could look at capital reserve. We already have, 12 first floor bathrooms built into individual classrooms. So the need is not necessarily there. It is something that we could look to do in the future at a low cost.
Right. So I don't know if to close this out, because I want to make sure we answer any questions of board members on this. A shining example of where we're, to the community, that we're looking at reducing the cost of the plan that's coming forth. In all plans in the previous, we talked about replacing the septic and the leach fields, et cetera. I think at this time, and kind of impromptu, going to ask Mr. Mackey to join us to discuss something that he brought up at the building committee today. We had said that we were going to be doing an evaluation of our current leach fields because we know it's going to be a pretty hefty price tag to do that. $500,000 has been the number, like thumb in the air, kind of at least $500,000. And what we said last board meeting was that we're going to do some tests. We're going to be having a company come out. We don't have official results, but indications. I don't know if we can speak publicly yet, but Mr. Mackey, if you don't mind joining us, just kind of give the community like directionally what we're thinking right now.
Hi. Yes, so today we had a septic company come out and do some testing, and the word back was good. The full report is not going to come out for another couple of weeks, so we'll have more detail on that later, but it at least is something to comfort us to say we can get, more time out of this current septic that we have. So, and again, like you said, we can plan ahead, and whether it goes in a future budget or a future project, we can at least now, be comfortable with having it not on the next project, the one that we're shooting for. So.
And do you mind, kind of put you on the spot, but just speak to what, you're part of the building committee. What was some of the discussion with the building committee when you were talking about this, and what was the reception or continued discussion?
Yeah, I mean, there were some concerns. Some people brought up some concerns about what the condition is. Originally, we had planned to have it in there, in the original plan, but the building committee came together, and now I know with this new information, we took it out to hopefully save money in the proposed project that we have coming. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate, getting in front of that so we could have that as part of our decision-making. So, good news for sure. Thanks, Mr. Mackey.
You got it.
So for board members, the recommendation, and want to make sure if the board isn't aligned to this before we go back out to our PMO, but the recommendation is that we do not put the leach field and septic redesign in this plan. One, because it's not needed. They think we have some, most likely, we'll get the official report, but that we would give directionally to the PMO that we wouldn't want that as part of the pricing. And I don't know if you have any questions on that, but, I think directionally that makes sense, but board members?
It came up in the committee meeting, though, just so that everybody is aware, that by not adding the leach fields, the beds to this, we would also be considering putting up a fence or a wall or a partition from the driveway, preventing anybody from accidentally driving over the leach fields to make sure that it's protected. So that might get added into this somehow, or again, it might be something that we add to the budget and we try to work in somehow ourselves. But we are looking at a way to protect that leach fields from anybody accidentally driving over it or anything.
So if we did this addition, we could do it with the current leach field as is, and it wouldn't affect what we're putting on? Okay.
As is.
And I think Mr. Mackey covered it, but just to make sure that everybody knows that when this passes, the addition also won't impact the leach bed. It won't impact the septic system. We'll still be operating at a good capacity. It won't have a negative impact on it.
With more classrooms, but
With more
roughly
classrooms.
roughly the same amount of kids.
Correct.
At least for the near future.
Right. Any questions on that? I mean, if everybody's okay, I think directionally we want to make sure to communicate that to PMO. That make sense? And Mr. Thompson, can you remind us, the board, when we will be getting the results from the various facility studies?
Yeah, so we will have the results of that facility study from the New Hampshire School Administrators Association at the end of November. I know we have a meeting on the 22nd. I'm hoping that we can have them come and present on that date, but the timing of the release of the report might impact that. So if that's not the case, and we can publish the report, prior to their presentation, but we could be looking at the first week of December. And again, that facility study, almost independent of this building project, really is an assessment of both of our educational facilities. And the focus is a little different than a typical facility study, because they're really looking at, they'll look at, a piece of it will be instructional impact as well. And it will give us an independent and objective view of how we're using our facilities and how we may want to use them in the future. And then the only other piece too, which is part of my superintendent update, is on Thursday, there's a State Board of Education meeting where they are going to release the ranked list from the building authority of their recommendation for who will receive building aid. It's my intention to be in attendance at that meeting. Now that, the ranking does not determine who gets building aid. There's still a number of steps, but it will give us some indication, and I will, of course, will update the board after that meeting, so you'll have a sense of whether, what the likelihood is of us receiving some aid. So we'll know as early as Thursday.
Good information. And again, I know a lot here for the board members. The other part is that with the building committee, we are looking at publishing a number of events starting at the end of November to provide tours, of course, but information. So a lot more, I'd say we'll be communicating at the next board meeting what that looks like. We will be looking to, again, be pretty strategic and simple with our message of safety, special ed, and student learning. So it's going to revolve around that is the general direction, but we'll be branding, of course, the message, and all members of the building committee have, I'd say, pretty energetic about coming to this board meeting in the future, as well as being part of whatever communication strategy we're going to put forth, from starting this month on. So a lot more is going to start being published that, for me, I would have liked to start sooner, than now as far as more of messaging, but I think now we have a lot grander of information that we can actually be out there and repeating this message. So fasten your fun belts for this. Lastly, I know people wondering about pricing. We do expect pricing in a few weeks from PMO and construction teams. I don't believe that at the next board meeting we'll have that, at least ready for prime time, because we'll get that initial, and then we'll want to do some reviews, talk about reducing anything or changing anything. I would imagine no later than the first meeting in December we would come with aggregated pricing, but we may publish it sooner as a starting point before the board actually gets it. But you'll of course get communication, and we'll just work on those numbers with the building committee from that point forward. So, anything else? Any questions from anybody? All right. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for all the work you're doing, corralling all of this. All right. Next, student data presentation from Mrs. Tomaselli. Oh, sorry. Before that, I missed one. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on me. Budget discussions with Mr. Dowd.
Budget discussions. So, as an initial matter, just by way of update, a couple quick things. One, we have our financial audit that we're wrapping up for 2020. I have scheduled time for the 2021 field work to come out for projects to be coming out like the week after Thanksgiving. And we're targeting that to be completed by year end, and then to have our 22 done in the first quarter of 2023. So I'll put all that out there for you. Our audit firm tends to get very, very busy. The close of books, like in August, September, I was out of the office a bit in the spring, if you recall, and so we've got our schedules to align now, I hope, and get those out of the way. We also have set revenue, and you have a schedule in your folder. So it's ironic we're talking about next year's budget. Revenue gets set once we close our books, and once that revenue is set, that determines how much we have independent of town funding. So the balance of what we need for our funding can be used to set tax rates for the town. And you'll notice in that MS24R, on the line that says 3290 to 3299, other state sources, we have 111,553. That was a portion of New Hampshire Retirement System contributions that the district made last year. 7.5% of that has been especially refunded to us this year. So we could do one of two things with that. As we had discussed at the last meeting, we can either put it into our revenue, so that's an amount that is not taxed to the town, which the board opted to do, or we could keep it off of our revenue, treat it as unanticipated revenue, hold a public hearing, and find a way to spend it. That's not how this board has chosen to handle this particular funding. So it's in there, revenue is set, and away we go. So the budget for this year, the expense budget for this year, so far, and we still have quite a few things to confirm. The superintendent and I go through with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that we don't have any duplication of efforts in terms of services that we obtain outside the district and staffing and that sort of thing. So looking at the current year budget, 31,189,534. Looking at a budget of about 32.8 or so so far. Difference of about 634,000 or so, which is about a 2% increase. So that's where we're at on the budget. Again, we go through that process around this time of the year to make sure that we have all of our budget numbers together, that we're only handling budget item requests once. And so we'll scrub that, and we'll have a final budget number before the next meeting. So I don't know if the board has any direction on the budget.
I'd like to go back to the audits
Yes.
real quick. So can you give us what is the tentative dates we're going to finish 20, 21, and then 22? Because it seems that the 2020 has gone on a bit longer than expected for sure.
Yep.
So what is our goal for 2020 to be finished finally?
My understanding is that we're hoping to get it done by Thanksgiving. So we're just exchanging final requests at this time. After Thanksgiving, we would then have the 21 field work started and in process.
So the 2021 has not started yet?
Correct. It typically doesn't start until the prior year closes.
And then how long do we think that's going to take to finish out?
End of year,
So they'll be done in 6 weeks?
I would
5
think, yeah.
weeks? Okay, and then the 2022 would start at the beginning of 23
Correct.
and finish,
Within the Q1, which would be before March.
okay? Because the 2020 is going on 18 months now?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm curious, like, how we're going to get after these in 5-6 weeks where it's taking 18 months?
Yeah, some of it's alignment of schedule, and we had the SAU audit wrap up in last year.
A while, yeah.
Yeah, it was a while ago, where we normally be doing the Hampstead 2020.
Okay,
We're doing that.
all right, yeah, if you can give us an update at the next board meeting, so at the next board meeting, we should have the 2020 done finally, right?
Yeah, I mean, it may be, it's right before Thanksgiving, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it should be pretty well done.
Okay, so, any questions on that? All right, as far as the excess funds, do we have to vote on that to directionally what we need to provide to you, or is that already?
I think it's all set. I don't think any action is needed. I
Unless we're gonna
believe
do
that we had
otherwise.
talked about having a vote on it to confirm. It's up to you. I don't think it was on as an action item on the agenda.
Okay.
As a confirmatory vote, I wouldn't mind at all.
Okay. And the total amount on that again was?
111, 553.
553, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So I think if you were to vote on it, it would be something to the effect of to accept 111,553 as revenue for the current fiscal year.
Yeah. So, looking for a motion to accept the 111,553 into the current revenue, yes.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all approved? Thanks. All right. So now we'll go to Mrs. Tomaselli. Thank you.
Hello. Is that on? Is that on? I don't think it is. Can you hear me? I know you can hear me. I don't know if the people at home can. So thank you so much. Good evening. So here's our presentation on the district assessment scores. So the first slide talks briefly about why we assess students. This is a piece of what we do in schools. At the kindergarten through 8th grade level, our assessments are used to make informed decisions around our future instruction. So it's important to kind of delineate that these are not competency-based end of course assessments. These help us steer course as we go throughout the year. Our diagnostic information is analyzed by our teaching teams during PLCs and at data team meetings, and it helps individual teachers as well as teaching teams look at the content and skills their students need and still have to master. Our performance data is triangulated. We use a product called iReady along with New Hampshire State Assessment, the New Hampshire SAS, as well as classroom level assessments and anecdotal teacher feedback. So we try to triangulate our student data as much as possible so we're seeing the whole child in a variety of different light. Also, we assess our students because it's state law and it's also federal law, part of every Student Succeeds Act. I'll talk to you first about the New Hampshire SAS. So SAS is administered in grades 3 through 8 for both ELA, which is English Language Arts, reading and writing, and math. We also assess students in grades 5 and 8 for science. If a student has a significant disability, they are allowed to take what's called a DLM, a dynamic learning map, rather than the traditional test. Additionally, we use iReady as our adaptive diagnostic test. This is administered both in the fall and the winter for students in grade K through 8, in ELA and math. And then in the spring, we do benchmarking testing for all students K through 8. So the spring test is a little bit more of a summative approach, look at their growth over the course of the year, whereas the fall and winter are diagnostic to kind of make sure that we are knowing where the students come in skill-wise. Again, these diagnostics are analyzed by our teaching teams, our data teams, and PLCs to inform our instruction. They also help us identify areas of learning loss, places where we might be out of alignment. They help us with RTI placement and programming, as well as personalization of skill intervention or remediation work. So here's a look at our spring 2002 math scores. So I've made a bar chart. It's very large behind you, or you have it in front of you. The blue is the state percent proficiency, and the green is the Hampstead percent proficiency per grade. So you can see that we are above the state percent proficiency in every grade level. Some grade levels far exceed, and some are a little bit closer. And this is from math. The next slide, oh, go back one. I know it's a little sensitive. You can go forward one to reading. Okay, perfect. So this is our spring 2022 reading and writing proficiency. Again, the state is in blue, Hampstead is in red, and you can see that we typically outperform the state in ELA, and we're doing so by a good margin in all grade levels. Next slide. So this slide shows a historical look at math proficiency in Hampstead versus the state. So I think it's important to take a look at where we were pre-COVID. You'll notice on this slide and on the next slide, there is no bar chart for 2020 because the scores from 2020 are considered null because of remote learning. But I look at the pre-COVID levels, like I look at 2016, 2017, and that's where I would like us to, to go back to those pre-COVID levels of performance. So I'm very pleased with some of the gains we've made from 21 into 22, but we still have some work to do. Our percentage proficiency right now in math as a district is 43.3%. So I think, there's some room for us to grow there. On the next slide, you'll see our ELA proficiency history, Hampstead versus the state. And in 2022, we are at 62.8% proficient. So we're doing very well in ELA. In the state average, that is a 49.2%. But we haven't yet regained all of our learning losses and shored things up to our pre-COVID levels. Okay, next slide. This is and I only focused on math because this is an area that I think we have more room for growth in than ELA. I could prepare this for ELA if you're interested, but these are some of our peer districts. So you'll see a variety of different school districts listed across the bottom, and this is a look back of 4 years. And then on the black horizontal line, you can see our state average. The state average in math is 41.3% proficient, and you can see where Hampstead lies relative to some of the other local districts. This data is available along with all the state data from all of the local districts on iExplore. And then the disaggregated data was pulled from I4C. So we can keep going. Next slide. This is a little information about our assessment schedule. So we do fall, winter, spring, and a little information about some of the iReady color codes. I'll skip through this slide because it's probably not necessary. Keep going. So when we want to look really granularly at a student, we go to our iReady platform. These little triangles you see on the left, the pyramid, is something that our data team looks at quite frequently, and you can break this down. I've showed it by school, and we're looking at the district as a whole, but our data teams whittle this down, and they can look by grade level, they can even look by classroom and by student. And the goal is to see that green bottom of the pyramid growing as the year goes on, and the yellow portion, which is kids who are approaching or at that ready to learn, it's very common for yellow to be very wide at the beginning of the year because they are where they should be ready to learn. We want to see it kind of shift upward and have more green, less yellow, and less red by the end of the year. But this really shows you the different domains for math and how we're pretty evenly, when you look at the district as a whole, we're pretty evenly dispersed among the different math domains, but once our data teams start looking at their grade level data, you'll see that, like, for example, measurement and data and algebraic thinking, there are certain grades that those are pockets that we need to improve on. So the grade level teams are aware of this. This slide shows our fall to fall score on the top left, where we are looking at pre-COVID levels on the far left in the 19-20 year, and then in the middle column you see the 21-22 year versus the fall. So I feel very good about our fall to fall. I'm hesitant to use the word growth, but performance towards proficiency is the kind of terminology you want to use with this. But our students are making gains fall to fall. And then on the bottom right side, what we see is how our district compares to nationally normed children. So over 8 million children take iReady in this country, and you can see how Hampstead kind of compares both to national normed data from fall 18-19 pre-COVID to the current year-to-date nationally. So this bottom right side is kind of an interesting look at how we, how we stack up across the country. And I like iReady because it's normed, nationally based on competency strands. These next two slides are, and I realize this is very small if you're at home. I did put the entire presentation, it's already on the Hampstead website, so I'll show you that at the very end. But if you really want to zoom in and look at all these numbers up close, you can. These next two slides show how our domain level performance compares to national. So this is interesting. When you break down the math domains, you can kind of see the lighter blue are areas that we are either not making gains or regressing compared to national norms. The darker blue on that top left side are areas we're very strong in. So there's a pattern here where you can see in several grade levels, measurement and data is an area that we need to focus on. And you can kind of see that for example, our geometry scores in some grade levels are really high, while in others there's some areas to grow. On the bottom right, we see how our fall data compares to last year's fall data. So the green is us versus us. And it's important to keep in mind that these are different cohorts of children. So when we look at 8th grade this year versus 8th grade last year, that's a different population of kids. So just be aware of that. The darker green, it almost looks black on the screen, are areas we have made significant gains in 1 year. So I'm very happy with, there's a lot of significant gains on this bottom right side. The lighter green shows you areas that we have either regressed in or just haven't made strong gains in. So certainly our teams, our math teachers and our data teams are aware of these areas, and we're taking steps to remediate that. Okay, and now we'll look at the same set of data for reading. It's really promising to know that 86% of our children are either performing on, above, or ready to learn at grade level in reading. So our kids have made some serious recovery in reading and are doing very well. Comprehension, both in literature and informational text, as well as vocabulary, are areas we can continue to improve. And as we learn more about the teaching of reading, the science of reading, as we learn more about decoding, and I say we, by meaning all educators, we're really having a shift in this country of how we teach reading. And as we learn, we're seeing the direct correlation of vocabulary skills, particularly at the upper grades, and how that correlates with comprehension. So I'm very excited that we are in the midst of an ELA pilot right now, and we're looking at different instructional tools because we're going to be making our decisions around which products to buy or whether we home grow things based on some of this information and the explicit need to teach vocabulary and improve our comprehension. Having said that, we are very strong with phonemic awareness in this district, so that's a really important formative skill. So these slides show you fall to fall on the top left, where we continue to be really strong in phonemic awareness. One thing that's really neat to look at in the top left is how students who are 2+ years below grade level in Hampstead have made a lot of gains in the past year. So that tells me that our intervention approaches are working, and those kids are getting onto grade level, and that's quite possibly the best thing you can do, is get a child on grade level, particularly with reading, because it's such an important life skill. So I feel very, very good about that. The bottom right slide shows how we compare to the national benchmarks. Again, pre-COVID, year to date, and then for this fall. And you can see that that middle column has a lot of red year to date nationally, and I believe that is due to not every district in the country embracing intervention with as much kind of gusto as we have. So it's just important to hone in on that recovery piece and figure out exactly what pieces are missing and give kids personalized interventions. And I think this shows that it's working. Next slide. This again is our fall year over year. So you can see on this slide, we did not have in reading K1 or 2 take the iReady 2 years ago. We just started that in the spring for 1 and 2, and just for the first time ever, our kindergartners took fall iReady. And that is a fairly common practice in many districts to have kindergartners take the test. So that, and my main goal with that is to get them access to my path personalized learning, so that we can figure out kind of what areas their strengths are and where they need to make some improvements. At HMS, you can see growth in all areas except in vocabulary. So that's a pretty known area we can target. In general, our district areas of concern continue to be comprehension and vocabulary. And then on the right, you can see the dark blue, it's like a navy color, shows the areas we have made significant gains in compared to national normed data. So one area that we, for example, we know we need to work on vocabulary. We also need to spend some more time on informational text. So some of the ongoing action items are here, kind of listed out. We really are going to continue to revise our testing protocols to make sure we gather data regularly, and that students have an opportunity to practice with they're called IAs, they're interim assessments. I just don't want their first time seeing SAS to be the day they take SAS. So interim assessments are a good way for students to get familiar with the side-by-side layout that is SAS. It's very unique compared to other platforms they use. We've also implemented MyPath and Lexia K8. These are personalized intervention tools. They can help our teachers differentiate because they allow us to use our one-to-one devices for targeted work. The data teams and school leaders and teachers are disaggregating their grade level and classroom data using data protocols. They're having unbelievably rich discussions. I'm so proud of the quality of their discussions when they're given some time to work together. We have an ongoing consultation with data team members to learn how to analyze our scores better and learn a little bit more about these intervention tools so we can flexibly use them. Work with ELA, PLC groups and pilot groups to analyze our instructional materials. We're also in process of realigning curriculum work in math, and that ties to our strategic plan, first priority. We're also revising our teacher evaluation model so that differentiation becomes standard practice and is an expectation. And then just the idea of continuous improvement in all areas. Slide. Some other action items are, we have a scheduling task force, which is part of our strategic plan to help us leverage our existing staff and our schedules to incorporate more time for math instruction. We did create a quarter-long math course this year. It's called Adventures in Math. Every student in 5th and 7th grade will get it. I'm sorry, 6th and 7th grade will get it. It's 1 quarter long. It's hands-on geometry and data analysis type of activities. We're going to continue to look for interdisciplinary opportunities and bring other subject areas on board with math concepts and incorporate the vocabulary. We're offering more math-related professional development opportunities for teachers than we have in the past. We're going to continue to meet with the math PLC and data teams to identify areas of focus and common misunderstandings and establish some goals for students in those areas. And then the ongoing curriculum realignment. Actually, I think that's a replication from the previous slide, so just ignore that one. And then in closing, I just want to say that, you know, we all here in this room know that these tests do not measure the whole student. This is our due diligence to make sure we are covering the academic standards in the way that we should be, but we certainly believe in the whole child. We've infused a lot of non-standardized learning opportunities into our programming. I have a list here on the left, and we'll continue to do so. So I'm available for all questions.
All right, thank you. A lot of good information. Questions? Go ahead, Dr. Hubner.
Yeah. So is the rigor approximately the same from before COVID to now?
That's a great question. So do we stay on grade level, or do we pull it back a little bit and shore up some of the needs? And I think it's probably a mixture of both, depending on the content area and the grade level and the mixture of kids in front of you.
Well, I meant more for SAS, right? So when we're looking at this drop, is the SAS approximately the same? So basically, like in math, we're looking at 20%, and English, we're looking at 12%. Like, that was just a quick aggregation.
The test is not going to adjust back at all.
Correct, okay.
So the measurement that we're held to will stay the same.
Okay.
It will stay to the standards for the grade level. But this is the stress and the wrestle, quite frankly, that educators have, is when I look out in front of me and I know there are children who can't access 6th grade math content.
So
Do
basically,
I go back? And so this is where the intervention tools come in.
So basically, this is the first time that we're really starting to understand how much COVID hurt
Yes.
these kids.
Spring 22 data is the first real authentic measurement of what did we lose, and what gains have we been able to make with a year of regular schooling.
Yep.
But certainly the prediction for learning loss recovery is still unknown. Most people think it's around 3 years. I think we're closing in much faster, so I'm happy with that.
So compared to this year to next year, I think something that would be good to look at what the growth, like you said, from 7th to 8th grade, if we can see those growth numbers, maybe in comparison to the national numbers, to see like how we're comparing.
So SAS we won't have national numbers for. We'll only have New Hampshire.
Okay.
But iReady we will have national numbers for. I can certainly do that.
And then how often do they get tested over the course of the year? Like their practice SAS, like how many times do we do that over the course of the year?
It varies among the different grade levels, but my expectation is that they will do the IAs at least once, so that no child goes into those SAS tests not having seen the layout of SAS. It's a side-by-side panel, so often there's for ELA, for example, there's a reading passage and then multiple choice questions on the right, and they have to scroll through the left and then answer on the right, and maybe scroll up and down on the left and answer again. So if for no other reason, that layout is kind of confusing to children if they don't have the exposure to it.
To understand the format.
They will see at least one IA in math and in ELA before their real test.
Okay. And then the only other question I had is national numbers versus our numbers. Is any of that normalized for socioeconomics, like for introduced lunch, or is that just the raw averages?
The disaggregate data is available,
Okay.
broken down all kinds of ways. I look at all students together.
Okay.
So.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
I know I have a question with it. Has anybody else yet? I want to say, there's one slide, and I don't know if we can get back to it, the one that's comparing our district to others. I want to start off with Lake. There we go. I think this is a good indication right here of at least a starting point. I don't think I think you're alluding to it. We're not done. There's a lot of work to do. But if you look at in the yellow where we were last year, we were near the bottom. I think a lot of disappointment across everybody, right? That's right. Where we were. But if you look at last year to this year, we had the largest gain back to where we expect should be showing up and close. We went from one of the lowest ones to one of the higher ones.
That's right.
So I think that's a kudos. So please pass. That's a good mark that we're trending in the right way. I think there's definitely work that needs to be done. I mean, it's good to see. If you go back 2 more slides, I think this. Sorry, Nicole, I'm having you go back and forth. This was an area I know we had discussions last year of I'd say another disappointment area where we were lower than the state for the first time in I think almost any category ever. So it was kind of alarming. And I remember Mr. Thompson said we'll be back above it next year and better. So again, kudos that we are above it and that we did a pretty good increase. Probably like a 25-30% increase over last year. So it's great to see that. So appreciate that.
And I do think this is an opportunity to thank all of our educators for just the absolute phenomenal job they did last year. When we welcomed students back to school last September, the gaps in their learning, the social emotional deficits, I remember watching, one of the grade levels out at recess, our educators had to teach children how to play out on the playground, how to line up, how to raise their hand. To see the tremendous growth that our students made over that last school year, because this is really what that's about. It is a testament to the hard work that the educators in Hampstead did with the students that were right in front of them. There's still work to be done. We are a district that is committed to continuous improvement. We will see those scores continue to trend in the right direction, but yeah, very happy to see the results that we had. And Nicole for the analysis and assessment of all of this data. This is what she's been working on for the last week.
I just want to point out too that it's very important for our students to partake in these standardized tests so that we have an accurate picture of areas they're strong in, but also very formative building blocks that they don't know and they don't have full mastery of, so that we can remedy that. And we can remedy that in small group instruction. We can remedy that with targeted intervention tools that are online. What really, really hurts us as a district, and if we go forward, Jeff, can you go forward 2 slides? What really hurts districts, and I'll say for all the districts, is when you opt out and we don't get 95% participation. We are expected as a district to get 95% participation in these tests, and every opt out over 90 or under 95% counts as a 0, and a 0 weighs heavy in a 100-point scale.
Yep.
So, I'm very pleased with the willingness of everyone. We will be looking to dial back some of the spring testing for our 8th graders. They get hit with quite a bit of testing between SAS, reading, math, science, and iReady. So we obviously have to do SAS, but we might dial back some of the iReady testing for our older kids as the year goes on.
I know us parents of 8th graders hear about it, so
yes,
understood.
You will. Yeah.
I think the one that alarms me a little bit here for me is if we can go forward a couple more to call it the checkerboard on the math. I don't know what the official title here. So 2 more after this. Nope.
Keep
2
going.
more. All right. 1 more. Right here. This one here, am I wrong on seeing that? It seems like we're regressing just as much as or we're below just as much as we're above. So this one's kind of a mixed bag. It's not like we're trending completely above. Am I reading this one correctly?
Yeah, and what you should kind of look at too is just know that our first graders in the spring, this was their first spring. They had never taken SAS before. So in those formative, this is our iReady spring for even, the first graders have never taken it before the spring at all.
Yeah.
But there are definitely some very clear pockets here that we need to work on in terms of measurement and data. So those are standards that can be woven into a variety of different classroom settings. I think of what Dave Remillard does in tech ed. There's a ton of measurement and data in there. I think of what our Mrs. Downey does in art. There's a ton of measurement and data could be woven into that, as well as geometry. So I think we're going to have to get creative in honing in on the standards that are kind of weak for us and get a more hands-on deck approach to it.
Okay.
Some kids learn in more colorful and hands-on ways than others. So seeing it outside of the math class is going to become, our kind of next area of focus, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think that when I knew that we were going to be talking about this, I reached out to a few parents, call my, bunch of families I know and ask them just how their kids are doing in math. It's kind of a mixed bag. That overall sentiment was really great job things being worked on, and they wish that there was more attention to math. Yes. Or more outlets for their child. Like I had two parents say, if they offered something after school or they offered some way that they didn't take, I'm going to say, I don't want them not to take band, but if they could, do more math in somehow, some way. So I think that if we provide those avenues, parents would take advantage of it because it is very important. So can you just speak a little bit more of that? Like where are we looking to explore being able to provide those kids that do need the more math help?
Sure. So we currently have, if your child needs help in math, we currently have homework club twice a week. We have a reading specialty room and a math specialty room, and we have free busing. So that is an option for free every single week, twice a week. They can stay from 3:15 till almost 4:25 twice a week and get concentrated additional math help. I think I'm very curious for parent feedback on the new course Adventures in Math. We've just successfully run 1/4 of that, and now the kids have transitioned, or they'll start transitioning after the November 11th close of grades into a second rotation. So that program is brand new. The idea with that is they will get a different boost of math, measurement and data and geometry, and more hands-on, like a lab setting. So I'm excited to kind of see the results of that, but I think as the staff learns more about math misunderstandings, more math standards, we have some resources from the DOE that we've looked at as a math PLC. The challenge now is to get that out to the greater population of teachers so that people who are not in the math department are aware of where kids kind of have misunderstandings. So that ongoing PD time and PLC time is just so important.
Okay.
We try to weave it into staff meetings, but inevitably it takes time to understand and distill some of this.
Gotcha. Just last question about that. Actually, I'm glad you brought up about homework club. I was, again, fact from fiction, trying to understand. I didn't have an answer for this parent, but they were told that homework club is only if they go there with an assignment versus can they go there and say, I'm not doing well in fractions, can you help me? Do they have to go to homework club with actual assignments, or can they go there saying, I just need help in this area?
I will have to clarify that, but I would certainly expect that it would be open for anyone who needs help in an area.
Okay.
But I can certainly clarify that with the principal. The intention of using ESSER funds to pay for homework club, which is what we are doing, is to mitigate learning loss. So whatever shape, form that comes in,
okay.
Even if they were to go and bring their Chromebook and work on MyPath in their personalized intervention work and pause when they run into questions, the teachers there are skilled in math instruction.
Yeah.
So that's the intent of it. But
All right.
I will follow up.
All right, because I'm going to ask that parent to watch this board meeting and watch this conversation right here,
Sure.
and then reach out tomorrow or as soon as they can to find out about this, because I know that for their child they wanted more and they wanted to send to homework club, but was told it was only if you bring an assignment versus just saying, I need help in something.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Yep.
Questions? All right. Thank you very much. go. All right. Next topic is on the union CBA negotiations update. And this one is more broad, but we'll talk about it too just briefly. It's just that as we wanted to put this on the agenda for the public to know, all this information you're hearing about the building addition, the budget, it's all coming to what is, we do every year as we get closer into January, where we're going to be going in with deliberatives and whatnot. So the other one, the big one, of course, is this year we have 2 union negotiations going on with HEA and HASS, or HAS. Both are progressing, both are moving forward, as we've talked about being good financial stewards, while also being supportive of our teachers and paras and staff. So no real updates to the community on that, other than they are progressing and moving forward, different tracks, different ways, but all in the name of, so we have bonds, or we have, warrant articles that'll be coming to the vote and coming to discussions January through March of 2023. And again, just to put it out there, the very first public hearing on all of this, from budgets and the addition, the negotiations, or what goes forward with agreements for vote, and anything else we want to put on warrant articles, very first public hearing would be on Tuesday, January 10th, which would be here at the middle school. And then we'd have a deliberative session 1, which would be on February 7th here at the middle school, and then followed by, of course, district voting, or session 2, which would be March 7th, 2023. So that's pretty much the update there, unless any board members, I missed anything you'd add in addition to that. I know that there are 2 board seats up that, hopefully some people will be rejoining us, or some people in the community want to join in on the fun that we have. But that would also, of course, be on the vote for March 7th. Anything else, board members? Any other public service announcements on that? Going once? Okay. All right, next, we do have a second reading of some policies that we want to go through. 4 policies I'd like to recommend that we do one at a time, like we did last time. And let's start with EHAB, data governance and security. This one, I know we heard at public comments last board meeting. We heard public comments this meeting. I would like to give an update. As I had said last time, I did reach out to Mr. Elliott. We had a good conversation about what, some concerns, some, back and forth, healthy discussion as always with Mr. Elliott. And our plan right now for board members is we are going to meet next week with Nicole, with Bob, with Mark, myself, and Jay to go over and talk about some concerns about EHAB, talk about what's in policy versus what would eventually be in procedure, and potentially ask the policy committee, if we see warranted, to go back and make any modifications. My recommendation, if we bring this to a vote, would be not to pass it, but be more to delay accepting it based on the outcome and direction of that. I don't know if procedurally wise, I'm going to ask Melissa if we should take a vote for that, or if we can just not take a vote and not bring it to a vote, a second reading.
Yeah, so if you want to not have it in the second reading, you can just carve it out and just table it for now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's my recommendation to the board. If we are okay with tabling it till, and we can bring it to the next meeting with what's the direction at that point.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Can I ask one question on the board being updated on data governance? Mr. Thompson, you may know, is that, like, we get updates from different people? Is that something that, like, IT would update, we've had this many problems, or so on and so forth, or would that be a security risk, just talking about how many problems we would have? Or
Yeah, so by statute, the data governance plan is reviewed and approved by the board each year.
Okay.
So we meet the standard. I would have some concerns, both in terms of security, but also personnel-wise, if we were to bring that data directly to the board. And I would be happy after our further conversation to elaborate on that.
Yeah. Just to follow up, though, if that was something to be had, we could always do that in a non-public under the RSA based on, I'd have to look it up, but
Might infringe
reputation.
on somebody's reputation. that
Right,
kind of
right.
thing. Yep.
So we could always do something
I
like
think
that.
we would want to seek counsel on that, just because, again, the board is, it needs to remain impartial.
Right.
As a matter of due
Yeah.
process for when disciplinary issues with personnel
I'm thinking,
exceed the superintendent's office.
I'm thinking more infractions, not who, but the what. But more discussion, of course.
Okay, yeah,
That makes sense.
okay,
right.
thank you.
Yep. So as long as board agreement, it looked like everybody's heads were nodding, we'll move on from EHAB and then move into EHB, data and records retention. Again, this one would be for second reading. So I'll make a motion to accept EHB as part of second reading.
I will second that motion.
My only discussion on that, is, and I know this is policy here, so procedurally wise, a list of what is being retained and how long those are being retained,
We do have that, yes.
and that's across everything that we,
It is.
okay.
In fact, it's one of the most exhaustive data retention lists that I've ever seen in any school district I've ever been a part of.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy if the board would like with the Friday update, if they'd like me to send them that information, I can certainly do that.
I think I would.
Yeah,
I
we
appreciate
can
that.
certainly do that.
You know, again, undertaking this right now for a global company, it's exhausting. It takes a while to do, so I appreciate the work.
It
that-
actually is a great resource.
Okay. Comments, questions on EHB? Aaron?
No.
All right, all approved? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, next, JJJ, access to public school programs by non-public charter school and home educated pupils. Looking for a motion to accept.
I will motion to accept policy JJJ.
Dr. Hubner has the motion. I'll second.
Yeah.
Any discussion on JJJ? We had a lot of discussion last time, so anybody follow up? All right. No discussion, all approved? Good, thank you. All right, and next is IHBG, home education programs. Again, I know we had quite a few discussions on this one in the past. Looking for a motion to accept IHBG, second reading.
So moved.
By Megan, and second.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on IHBG?
This is the policy based off the current recommendations of the New Hampshire School Board Association.
Yes, and changes that had occurred in the statutes related to our obligation, the district obligation for homeschool students.
Okay. Does the changes in the stipends affect this at all, or the stipend program that they're doing for homeschooling?
No, it does not.
All right.
And I think it's important to note that our Director of Student Services, Jessica Parsons, we meet regularly, and we have many of our most recent conversations have been about outreach to homeschool families. There are some changes in the statute that are reflected in the policy where a family can designate the Commissioner of Education or the director of a charter school to be the person responsible for the child's program. And what that does is it makes it difficult for the school to recognize and identify families that it's called the participating agent. I'm sorry, that word wasn't coming to me right away. It makes it difficult for the district to identify families that may be homeschooling their students. So what we've talked about is really looking for ways to reach out to the community to offer and advertise for homeschool students access to the educational program. Things like co-curricular and extracurricular activities. I had a conversation with a homeschool parent a few weeks ago where they were shocked to learn that their child can attend a dance, their child can try out for a soccer team, their child can take a math class here at school. So I do think that there's more outreach that needs to be done by the school in order to make sure that parents are aware of those. But sometimes there's some communication barriers. So.
Is there a way to go through the parent-teacher organization? I don't even know what it's called. I'm sorry. But to try to have them outreach to people that are homeschooled, if they know of them?
Yeah, that is a piece of it. There's several organizations throughout the state that are sort of coalitions or partnerships for homeschools, and we can certainly look at that. And again, we do maintain a database, but that is of individuals that we know. And those are typically people that have been enrolled and decide to homeschool. But oftentimes, families move in from other districts, or families decide to homeschool their child before they even come to public school. And I think it's just important that they realize that, even if you're homeschooling your child, we are still a resource for your child in support of their education.
Absolutely. That's a great sentiment. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All approved? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we'll go to board comments and correspondence. Over to you, Dr. Hubner.
Do you want to talk about the Pinkerton meeting, or do you want me to talk
You
about
can.
it?
I got other things too. So.
Okay. So we went to the Sending Towns update, and they kind of went through the different things that went through it. The most notable thing is they were talking about a 10% increase in tuition for next year, which we had lengthy discussions, and that is not a firm number yet. And we're hoping it's going to come down, but that was definitely more than any of us expected, and something to keep in mind going into this budgeting year and when we're looking at passing things for this year. So, yeah, it wasn't a great night. So, but we will figure it out. So,
Okay. Did they say when they'll be firming those numbers up to the audience?
I feel like it was sometime in November, maybe November 15th.
Yeah, I believe it's the last week in November. And I can get the date where their Board of Trustees will vote on the final number for the budget.
Okay. That could impact what we decide for our budgets, as we're firming our budgets.
We'll be able to make the adjustment in time to reflect the final budget.
Yeah.
What you receive from the administration on the 22nd might still be a projection.
Right. Okay.
And it is important to note that we would typically, in the preliminary phase, we would look to budget 5% as an increase.
Right.
And the 10% number is their tuition rate, which is reflective of their operating budget, but also their overall number of students enrolled, which is going down next year. It's what they call the divisor. That's how they determine the tuition rate.
Right.
So there's two negative factors impacting the overall tuition rate.
What's the difference between our eighth grade class going up and our graduating seniors?
I know we are sending a large 8th grade class. I'd have to double check, and I can certainly get back to you on the 12th grade class size. Yeah.
I mean, it was,
If
when
you
they
take a look-
left here, it was like, I want to say it was like 90-something, 90-ish.
So we may have more people in Pinkerton with an increased cost.
I was going to say, last meeting's agenda packet that Melissa sent to us has
Yeah.
those numbers, so if you know,
Yeah.
it's always
No,
there also.
Yeah, I can take a look at it.
So, okay. Thank you for that kind update, Dr. Hudner.
All set.
All right. For mine, I attended the HMS Awards night. It was amazing to hear that the field hockey team had won the championship, I think the second year in a row, and to 4-1, so that was great to hear. What I also enjoyed was hearing about the cross-country team. And while there was no awards, it was that every child that participated had a personal best by the end of the year, 100% across the board. So, I want to say kudos to all the coaches there that, getting all the kids to do their personal best. And also all the students that got awards for their leadership or, their coaches awards, et cetera. So it was fun and great to see that. So I appreciate the coaches who do stay later, who do travel with the teams, spend more time, that, while they do get compensated financially, they also get compensated by the great work that they're doing with the students and building future leaders. So I want to say thank you to them.
Actually, one more thing to say is I went to the championship game for girls soccer, and I was really impressed at how many people from Hempstead showed up, and what a great job they did, which was pretty impressive.
Yep. That was good. All fall for all the sports. So thank you.
So I did attend the DC info session tonight. Thank you for, it was a great introduction. This is my first 8th grader. Wasn't really sure what to expect, so it was like the amount of information that you messaged I thought was perfect. Appreciated your enthusiasm, and there were some good questions, as you said, from the parents. So thank you.
Okay, so as Carl said, we went to the sending school meeting. I'll give you the positive part of that. They had the culinary students make a meal, a buffet meal, and it was awesome. And we had some Hampstead students represented there, so that was great. I have like no concept of time right now, so hopefully we didn't already talk about this, but I did go to the Halloween costume parade for the Central School, and it was so cute, and they were so awesome, and I have to give props to Sarah Arroyo for doing the Thriller dance so the kids could watch her and see what they were supposed to do if they forgot their moves, so she got really into that, and it was really cute. Let's see, so the other thing I have is that the VEX robotics team at Pinkerton had their first competition on Saturday. My son was there in Manchester. 2 teams advanced to the states already. And the next competition is this Saturday at Pinkerton, and the Pinkerton teams are having doing some fundraising, so if you want to show up and support them, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Aaron. All right. I'm going to send it on over to Mr. Thompson for the consent agenda.
All right, there is no personnel report tonight. Moving into the superintendent's report, the district is in need of substitute registered nurses, so if anyone, any community member, parent, anyone knows a registered nurse that might be willing to come in. Oftentimes, nurses coming from a clinical environment come into a school and find it to be a very different place. It's very exciting, the opportunity to work with students. So if you're interested, you can apply through AppleTrack. You can always reach out to me personally. But it certainly is, when our school nurses are not in the building, it is our administrators that cover for them. And I do think they do a wonderful job at covering for the nurse. But at the end of the day, they're not medical professionals. And so it's really important that we're able to attract some substitute nurses. It has been just really an amazing experience over the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of great events in the schools, and I've had the opportunity to participate. Principal Milbury mentioned the Global Read Aloud, just such a fantastic event. To think about, our fifth grade students having really robust conversations about, with students from Canada, about a book set in Mumbai, India. It was such a great experience. Their knowledge of the topic with their just enthusiasm for being on the big screen and interfacing with students from another country, it was just so energizing. So I appreciate the work that Mrs. Connors and the fifth grade teachers do to make that event happen. I look forward to future ones. I also had the opportunity to visit last Thursday the Central School. So Mrs. Gadzoulis, who's our new music teacher, brought her RTI group. So she works with a group of 10 students that come to her on a daily basis. And she's been working with them on Charlie Brown, to recite Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin. So these RTI students went down to Mrs. Stark's fourth grade music class and presented Charlie Brown. They were in costume, they had memorized their lines, and it was just such an amazing experience. I was actually sitting in the audience with the fourth graders, and to look at them looking up at the middle school students with just amazement. It was really neat. And I think what I really appreciated about it was those kids in that RTI group, when they first got assigned to this RTI, they weren't necessarily theater kids. They didn't see them as performing artists. And then to see them up there on the stage acting, it just showed me the power that the middle school has. They really created a passion in these kids. They're now passionate about theater because they were assigned to Mrs. Gadzoulis' RTI. So really neat experience. I also, the same day, had the opportunity to visit the fourth grade. There was an all-school assembly at the Central School. It was a kickoff assembly for the fourth grade's We Deliver, which essentially is sort of an inter-office post office at the Central School. And it was really neat because the postal workers from the Hempstead Post Office came into the school. They swore in the fourth graders, so they are now official We Deliver postmasters. And just such a neat event. And it just made me realize, we've gone 2 years without and not having some of these events, these assemblies and the visits from this school to that school. And it just made me realize, how much those things were missed and how exciting it is really to get back to normal, so to speak. And then lastly, to follow up, we did have the Sending Town School Board and Superintendent meeting with the Board of Trustees at Pinkerton. That what follows that is the Sending Town Superintendent meeting with the headmaster. We had that meeting last week as well. We talked about the budget, starting to drill down on some of those specific costs. There's some fixed costs that are driving the increase in tuition. Energy is really one of them. Contract negotiations is another one. We also talked about safety and emergency management amongst the other superintendents. We're in the process of working with Pinkerton Academy to develop a reunification plan. If there was ever an emergency at the academy and they had to send students off campus, we want to make sure that we're able to reunify parents and students. So we're going to be working with them and the other superintendents to develop that plan. At that meeting, we also talked about snow days. I hate to use the S word. I know the weather's been really warm, but inclement weather at some point is going to come. We recognized across the Sending Towns Our DPWs are understaffed, and there is some concern about road conditions. It is our intention in Hampstead for us to utilize a traditional snow day model and a remote snow day model. The feedback that we've gotten from parents is they like both. And I would anticipate that the first inclement weather day would be a traditional snow day. Usually that's the most magical day for kids to get out into the snow. But we would use remote snow days really to keep down the number of extra days we have to make up in June. So that is my report. And then just lastly, just a reminder to our community that this Friday is Veterans Day. There's no school. But more importantly than not having school is there's a Veterans Day celebration here at 11 o'clock on November 11th. And I would just ask if in the gymnasium, any community member, if you have time, it's really, Veterans Day is an important time to honor the men and women who, fight for our country. And so if you're around at 11 o'clock, please come and join us. We'd love to see you. The ceremony is really short. It's about an hour, and then you can go off and enjoy the rest of your day off. And that's all I have for superintendent report. I will entertain any questions that folks might have.
I think we're good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's actually under other business, old business. I was going to say the same thing about Veterans Day on Friday, so 11 o'clock, and I know that there will be a lot, as there typically is. Always look forward to it. I also want to say thanks to the school and to the town. I heard that there was quite the turnout today for voting, so appreciate all the work that was done, and Mr. Mackey, Mr. Dowd, and others to get that area set up over there as we usually do. Looking forward to going home and hearing how the day went. So with that, unless there's anything else, we have that we don't have a non-public tonight, so we can adjourn just after what we expected by 10 minutes, so 9:14 p.m. on November 8th, 2022 in the books. Thank you all.
Thank you.